Immersed robot.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersed Robot, and in this video I'm just doing a very quick look at Elite Dangerous again. So for anybody who watched my first impressions with the PIMAX 8KX, I did mention a few things that I felt weren't quite up to scratch in that first video, but I was still getting used to the headset honestly, and I hadn't had a chance to really dial in settings, so I wanted to revisit Elite Dangerous and just to try to get things set up a little bit better. So with some of the other experimentation I've been doing with the PIMAX 8KX, I've tried quite a lot of different titles now, and I'm starting to get to grips with all the little nuances of the settings and the best way to set up the headset and stuff like that. And I'm finding the best thing to do is to actually lower SteamVR resolution scaling down. So in this at the moment I'm only running at 60% SteamVR resolution scaling, which is incredible to me, and you can still see the resolution being displayed on the FPS VR overlay at the bottom of the screen there. It's still a very high resolution, so it's 3520 by 3060, and it's still, you know, I mean, even with this wide field of view, this looks fantastic. Now of course I've changed a few in-game settings as well, but the ratio and just what I was doing last time just wasn't correct for whatever reason. So in fact, let's go in to settings just to see what I'm doing there now. So if we go into graphics and then we'll go to quality, I'm using basically what I started with was I think it was VR low or VR medium. VR low, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, so what I'm doing here now is to do with the super sampling, which I'm setting at 0.75. So this is, you know, basically if you look at this, I'm running SteamVR resolution at 60%, then in-game super sampling at 0.75, well under native resolution. But here's the trick, the HMD image quality, and 1.25 gives a nice balance, I'm finding. Now I've not been into a station yet with these settings, but originally I had it set on 1.5 and it gave a slightly sharper image, as you might expect, but I was running right on the edge of those 90 FPS. Those frame timings were sort of 10 milliseconds really, right on the edge of what was acceptable, and in order to maintain 90 frames per second. So I thought I'd lower it down to 1.25 to see what it looked like, and it still looked fantastic. So I've decided to stick with that, and hopefully if I go into a station or I land on a planet's surface, then it should still maintain that relatively well, or, you know, perhaps it will jump into those reprojection 45 FPS, but that's okay. I don't necessarily mind that if it's just on sort of planet surfaces or in stations and things like that, and you can always adjust settings if that's not to your preference a little bit further. But this looks so much better than the first time I tried it. Everything looks really sharp. I mean, when I look at like that, that text there on the cockpit, so mass locked, landing gear, cargo scoop, that section looks a lot clearer, less pixelated than it was before. But it's still, you know, it could be sharper. Of course, in the Reverb G2 it was sharper, but that's pretty good. It's a pretty sharp, clear image, very similar to memory from what it was in the Valve Index, but of course still not got the Valve Index. I'll probably give an update on that at some point, but yeah, so if I can do a to B comparison with the Valve Index, then I think it would be pretty similar to what it was before. Let me just see actually if I can go down onto that planet. I don't think I can. Let's check it out. Okay, yeah, so it looks like I can just go down to that planet's surface. Let's see how it performs if I go down to there. Okay, so let's just land on this planet and we'll see what how it performs when we go down. So you can see it dropping a little bit there, as it starts to load in more detail on the planet's surface. That's probably in line with what you would expect. God, there's some big mountains on this planet. And there will be drops. I'm sure there'll be you know, drops in frame rate as we approach the surface, but sometimes once you're landed you can get a slightly more consistent frame rate. So yeah, a few drops there. It's more like spikes than sort of more consistent frame rate, to be honest. So let's go down a little bit closer. So just entering the glide phase now, and still maintaining 7.5 milliseconds frame times, still well under that 90 frames per second threshold. And I've got to say, this looks fantastic. You know, I think there's something like with the valve index, there definitely feels like less screen door effect in the PIMAX 8KX on these settings than there is in the valve index. There is that slight problem with the valve index, which Valve actually updated SteamVR to adjust, and I can't remember what it's called now. The vertical, like, it's almost like a vertical line offset or something like that. I apologise, I should know the name of that, but it's something that you can do to mitigate like the pixel. It's almost like you do see a kind of screen door on the valve index, but this doesn't suffer from that at all, and it's a nice clear image. There is a little bit of pixelation on certain things, and I'm not running any anti-aliasing or anything like that in the settings on this. But it does seem like we can still run it. I mean, this is low settings, the textures don't look very detailed at all, so we can probably ramp up a little bit of graphical detail with these, because we're still well under the threshold, the frame timing threshold for 90 frames per second. Yeah, so this is low. I mean, if you look at the geometry of the mountains and things like that in the distance. So let's actually just as long as I don't crash, I do not want to crash. Let me just go into settings, and we'll just adjust that up, see what the effect is if we go up a little bit. So this is now VR medium setting, so it was VR low before. Now it's VR medium with that decrease in in-game super sampling to 0.75 and an increase in HMD quality to 1.25, just as before, but slightly better detail on textures and things like that. Still able to maintain 90 frames per second. And it looks nice. You know, this is not a bad looking experience. I should say that, I don't know if I've mentioned this, surely I did it in the last video. I've actually no, I didn't mention it, but I've uninstalled Odyssey now, so I am playing pretty much exclusively Elite Dangerous Horizons. So I'm not playing the latest version. If this will probably look a little bit different if it was Odyssey, and be a lot more demanding on the PC, and I doubt we'd be getting these frame rates on Odyssey. But no, this looks okay. Dropping down a little bit there. We might go into, yeah, it's more spikes. We're getting sort of GPU and CPU spikes as we approach the surface. But this is a pretty fantastic experience. I will go into a little bit more detail. I won't get too much lower than this actually, but I will get into a little bit more detail of my overall impressions of the PIMAX 8KX as we go through the next few weeks and I continue to use it. Overall, I'm extremely impressed with this headset, especially when compared to my first experience with PIMAX, which I mentioned a few videos ago. This now is something I can enjoy. I will say it's not perfect for me, and I think there's the PIMAX headsets are more susceptible to an individual's face shape, eye positions and those kinds of things than the average VR headset. I think if you're lucky enough to have those sort of characteristics that fit well with this headset, then I think you'll have a great time. I feel like I'm sort of right on the border, right on the edge of what visual comfort I can get from this headset. And it's like, looking around now, it's good, it is really good, but there's just this very slight visual discomfort, and I think most of that will stem from simply not being able to get the lenses close enough together. Again, I've got a 62 to 63 millimeter IPD, and even on this lowest IPD setting, I still feel like it's not close enough together for me to get an absolutely perfect experience. However, you know, this can vary so much from person to person. I also think this affects how much a person can experience distortions in this headset, and how much the binocular overlap will affect them as well. And again, I get comments about the IPD offset setting in PIMAX titles, and I have used that. I've tried to get a better experience by utilising that setting. Unfortunately, I've followed tutorials of how to do that in the best way, and I've followed them, and when I turn back to see what setting I've got, it ends up being 0 again on the offset. So it seems like the offset is more or less right, but it's just like this slight sensation that the lenses are not close enough together, and when I measure them, they are further away than the actual IPD register says within headset. And looking into this is generally because, most people will say it's generally because the canted displays and the canted lenses mean that the position of your eyes needs to align with this this triangle of how the canted lenses intersect with your eyes. And of course that means that if your eyes are a little bit further back in your head, or a little bit further forward, then the offset will be wrong. They won't align correctly, and I think this is part of the problem. There's a lot to go into with this. I'm getting into a bit more detail than I planned, to be honest, but there's some interesting, in fact I'll put a link to a write-up which explains this and the reasons why it leads me to believe that the PIMAX is probably a little bit more susceptible to an individual's face shape and all these individual things, these subjective values that the individual people have in order to get the best experience from it. Having said all of that, which was a very long-winded little tangent that I went on there, overall I'm really enjoying this headset. I think it's great, and even though it's not quite to where I want it to be, it's a nice, comfortable, overall, you know, pretty much comfortable experience. And that wide field of view can't be overstated how much it can impact certain experiences. Just getting back onto the frame rate here, actually. So we are we were dropping down into reprojection there, back up to 90 now. So it's sort of on the threshold of just maintaining 90 FPS. But that's I've waffled on, I've rambled on long enough on this video. It was intended to be very quick actually, but I've gone on a little bit longer than I intended. But yeah, I'll continue to play with the PIMAX 8KX and continue trying different things, and I'll probably continue to refine my experience in Elite Dangerous, and especially No Man's Sky. Actually, I want to get back to that and really try to dial in a few more settings on that. But that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you next time.